My name is Eduardo, and at 32, I thought I knew what pain was. 10 years as a Marine, 4 deployments across the Middle East, I had seen my share of suffering. But nothing prepared me for that text from my dad just days before Christmas. After a decade of service, I was finally coming home, only to read those cold words. Do not come home. You are not welcome here anymore. I simply replied, fine. My heart shattered as I hit send. 7 days later, I woke up to 20 missed calls from my family and 1 from their lawyer. If you are watching this, please let me know where you are from, and hit that like and subscribe button as I take you through the most painful homecoming a soldier could imagine. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Rochester, Minnesota meant cold winters and warm family gatherings. Our 2-story colonial house on Maple Street was nothing fancy, but it was home. Every weekend, my father Richard would mow the lawn with military precision, a habit from his own Army days. He was a man of few words, but strong opinions. Standing at 6'2" with broad shoulders and a stern expression that rarely softened, my father commanded respect from everyone in our household. A man earns his place in this world, he would tell me as I helped him clean the garage or fix the car. Nothing is given to you, Eduardo. Remember that. My mother Margaret was his opposite in almost every way. Where he was rigid, she was flexible. His booming voice contrasted with her gentle tone. She worked as a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital, bringing the same care and compassion home to us. She had warm brown eyes and a smile that could melt the Minnesota snow. Mom was the peacemaker, the one who smoothed rough edges and healed wounds both physical and emotional. Your father loves you, she would whisper when his criticism became too harsh. He just shows it differently. My brother Michael was 3 years older than me and could do no wrong in our father's eyes. He was studious, practical, and followed our father's path into business. With his perfect grades and practical mindset, Michael was everything our father wanted in a son. He played football, joined business clubs, and planned his future with the same precision Dad planned everything. Watch your brother, Dad would say. Michael knows where he is going in life. Then there was my little sister Sophia, 5 years my junior. With her pigtails and constant questions, she idolized me in a way that made me want to be better. We shared a special bond, staying up late telling stories with flashlights under blankets when our parents thought we were asleep. I taught her to ride a bike, to throw a football, and promised to always protect her. When I grow up, I want to be brave like you, Eddie, she told me once, using the nickname only she was allowed to use. But the most unconditional love came from my grandmother Eleanor. Grandma Eleanor lived with us after Grandpa passed, occupying the guest room that became her own small kingdom. Her walls were lined with books and photographs, and her room smelled of lavender and wisdom. She had been a nurse in World War II and understood something about service that the rest of my family did not. Follow your heart, Eduardo, she would tell me during our private conversations. Your path is yours alone to walk. Christmas was always special in our house. Mom would decorate every inch of the living room with garlands and ornaments collected over decades. Dad would grudgingly climb the ladder to place the star on top of the tree, though he pretended to hate the task. Michael would calculate the most efficient way to open presents, while Sophia would shake each gift in anticipation. Those moments, gathered around the fireplace with hot chocolate and cookies, were when our family felt most like a unit. My dream since childhood was to join the Marines. I was fascinated by their discipline, their brotherhood, their sense of purpose. I collected books about military history and watched documentaries about brave men and women in uniform. When I shared this dream at the dinner table at 17, the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. No son of mine is going to waste his potential playing soldier, my father declared, his fork clattering against his plate. You will go to college like your brother. Business, law, medicine. Those are real careers. Richard, my mother began, but his raised hand silenced her. I served my time so my children wouldn't have to, he continued. Eduardo will get an education. Grandma Eleanor caught my eye across the table and gave me a slight nod. Later that night, she knocked on my bedroom door. Your father was stationed in Korea, she explained. He never talks about it, but he saw things there that changed him. He is afraid for you. But this is what I want, I told her. This is who I am. Then be who you are, she replied simply. He will come around eventually. The argument came to a head during my senior year of high school. I had already contacted a recruiter without telling my parents. When the acceptance letter arrived, I presented it at dinner, my hands shaking but my resolve firm. I leave for basic training after graduation, I announced. My father stood so quickly his chair tipped over backward, his face flushed red, and veins protruded from his neck. You do this. You do it without my blessing, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. You are choosing to throw away everything I have worked to give you. Richard, please, my mother pleaded. No, Margaret. He has made his choice. He walked out of the room, and something changed in our relationship that night. A distance grew between us, a chasm I did not know how to bridge. I left for basic training with tearful hugs from my mother and sister, a stiff handshake from my brother, and the absence of my father, who refused to drive me to the bus station. Only Grandma Eleanor seemed truly proud, pressing her old service medal into my palm before I left. Come back to us, she whispered. But go be the man you need to be first. I did not know then how prophetic her words would become, or how many years would pass before I truly came home. Basic training at Paris Island was exactly as brutal as I had expected, and nothing like I had imagined. The drill instructors stripped away my civilian identity within hours of arrival. My head was shaved, my clothes replaced with identical uniforms, my name replaced with recruit or more colorful terms when I failed to meet expectations. Move faster, think faster, be faster, became the mantra pounded into us day and night. The physical challenges were intense. 5-mile runs before dawn, obstacle courses, endless push-ups and sit-ups. My body transformed, shedding the softness of civilian life and hardening into a tool for combat. But the mental transformation was even more profound. I learned to function on minimal sleep, to react without hesitation, to put the team before myself in every situation. It was during these grueling weeks that I met Jason and Marcus, 2 recruits who would become as close as brothers. Jason was from a small town in Georgia, soft-spoken but with an inner strength that never wavered. Marcus came from Chicago, street-smart and quick, with both jokes and solutions to problems. We suffered together, encouraged each other, and formed bonds that only shared hardship can create. My dad thinks I am wasting my life too, Jason confided one night as we polished our boots. Says I should have stayed to run the family store. My mom just cries every time I call, Marcus added, like I am already dead. My father would not even drive me to the bus station, I admitted. We graduated basic training, standing tall, no longer boys playing at being soldiers, but Marines ready to serve. My mother and Grandma Eleanor attended the ceremony. My father did not. He is proud, my mother insisted. He just does not know how to show it. But the letter from him that arrived a week later contained only a gift card and 3 sentences. Congratulations on completing basic training. Your brother made Dean's List again. We expect you home for Christmas if possible. My first deployment came 6 months later. Afghanistan stretched before us, a landscape of dust and danger. Our unit was assigned to patrol a region near the Pakistan border, providing security for a local village and hunting Taliban fighters who moved through the mountain passes. The first firefight is etched into my memory like an engraving on metal. The crack of bullets, the shouted commands, the smell of gunpowder and fear. I moved on instinct, training taking over where conscious thought failed. When it was over, Marcus clapped me on the shoulder. You did good, Eduardo. Textbook response. That night I called home, needing to hear familiar voices after facing mortality for the first time. My mother answered, concern evident even across thousands of miles. Are you eating enough? Are you safe? When are you coming home? My sister grabbed the phone next. Eddie, did you get my care package? I sent cookies and those beef jerky sticks you like. When my father finally came to the phone, his voice was stiff, formal. Are you maintaining your equipment properly? Remember what I taught you about gun maintenance? Yes, sir, I replied automatically. Good. Your brother just got an internship at Wilson Financial. Starting salary is impressive. The pattern continued through my years of service. 4 deployments, each one changing me in ways my family could not understand. Afghanistan twice, then Iraq, then Syria. With each return to American soil, the distance between my family and me seemed to grow. Emails from my father became increasingly tense, focused on Michael's accomplishments and my perceived failures. Your brother bought his first house, or Michael got another promotion, always followed by questions about when I would get serious about my future. My video calls home revealed physical changes in my family. My mother's hair graying, my sister growing from a child to a young woman, my father's posture slightly stooped with age. But the emotional distance was even more apparent. They lived in a world of mortgage payments and school functions, while I lived in a world of life or death decisions. Then came the news that shattered me more than any combat experience. During my 3rd deployment, Grandma Eleanor passed away in her sleep. I was in a remote forward operating base in Syria when the Red Cross message arrived. "I need to go home," I told my commanding officer. "My grandmother died." "I am sorry, Marine," he replied, genuine sympathy in his eyes. "But we are in the middle of a critical operation. We cannot spare anyone right now. Not even for this." I missed the funeral. The only person who had fully supported my choice was laid to rest without me there to say goodbye. When I finally got through on a satellite phone, my father's anger was palpable. "She asked for you at the end," he said, his voice thick with accusation. "She waited for you." "Dad, I tried. The mission would not let me," I explained, my throat tight with unshed tears. "The mission. Always the mission. Well, your mission cost you your goodbye. I hope it was worth it." The line went dead, and something inside me did too. My mother and sister still kept in touch, but their communications seemed monitored, controlled. My father had always been the gatekeeper of family information, and now that role became more pronounced. What I did not know, until later, was that he was controlling what they knew about me as well. My final deployment ended with an injury. Not dramatic enough for a Purple Heart, but serious enough to require months of physical therapy. A roadside bomb hit our convoy, and while I escaped the worst of it, my left leg took shrapnel that required multiple surgeries to remove. During my recovery at Walter Reed, I had time to reflect on my decade of service. I had given everything to the Marines: my youth, my innocence, my unquestioning belief in right and wrong. What I had received in return was invaluable: brotherhood, purpose, and a sense of having made a difference in the world. But I had also lost so much, particularly my connection to the family I had grown up with. As my medical discharge approached, I made a decision. It was time to go home, not just for a visit, but to rebuild what had been broken. Christmas was coming, the first one I would spend with my family in years. I would surprise them, show up on their doorstep, and begin the process of healing our relationship. "You sure about this?" Marcus asked when I told him my plan. Now a civilian working as a private investigator, he remained my closest friend. "From what you have told me, your old man holds grudges like a professional." "He is still my father," I replied. "And it is Christmas. If there is ever a time for reconciliation, it is now." Little did I know how wrong I was. My apartment in San Diego felt temporary despite having lived there for nearly a year during my recovery and transition to civilian life. White walls remained undecorated. Furniture was functional rather than personal, and packed boxes lined one wall, ready for whatever came next. The only concession to the upcoming holiday was a small artificial Christmas tree on my coffee table, a gift from my physical therapist, who worried about my lack of festive spirit. I had been counting down the days until my flight home to Minnesota, marking them off on a calendar with childlike anticipation. 20 days, 15 days, 10 days. Each morning, I would wake up and immediately check how many remained before I would see my family again. Shopping for Christmas gifts became an almost therapeutic activity. For my mother, I found a delicate silver locket that could hold family photos. For Sophia, now in college studying education, I purchased a beautiful leather-bound planner with her initials embossed on the cover. Michael was harder to shop for, as I hardly knew who he was anymore. but I settled on an expensive fountain pen set that seemed appropriately professional. The gift for my father took the longest to find. I wanted something meaningful, something that might bridge the gap between us. I finally found it in an antique shop 3 blocks from my apartment, a vintage military pocket watch from the Korean War era, similar to one my father had mentioned losing during his service. It cost nearly a month of my disability pay, but the moment I saw it, I knew it was perfect. He will love this, I told myself as the shopkeeper wrapped it carefully in tissue paper. He will understand what I am trying to say. The text messages with my sister and mother had been increasingly warm. As Christmas approached, "Mom is making your favorite apple pie," Sophia wrote. "She has been testing recipes all month. Your old room is ready for you," my mother messaged. New sheets and everything. There was radio silence from my father and brother, but I told myself that was normal. They were not the type to send excited texts about holiday preparations. They would show their feelings when we were face to face. 5 days before my scheduled flight, I was packing my duffel bag when my phone chimed with an incoming message. Expecting another update from Sophia about holiday plans, I smiled as I picked it up. The smile froze and then faded as I read the sender's name, Dad. My father almost never texted. He considered it an inferior form of communication, preferring calls for their directness or letters for their formality. A text from him was unusual enough to make my heart rate increase. The message was brief and devastating. "Do not come home. You are not welcome here anymore." I stared at the screen, certain I had misunderstood. I read it again, then a third time. The words did not change. I immediately tried calling, but the call went straight to voicemail. I tried my mother's phone, then Sophia's, then even Michael's. No one answered. An hour later, another text arrived, this one longer but no less painful. "We have learned about your activities during your deployments. This family does not harbor criminals. Do not contact your mother or sister again. Any attempt to visit will result in legal action." What activities? What crimes? I said aloud to my empty apartment. What is he talking about? I sent messages to my mother and sister asking for explanation, but received no responses. Something was very wrong. My father could be stern, even cold, but this level of rejection made no sense. I had served honorably, received commendations, done nothing that would bring shame to my family, unless a cold realization washed over me. Michael. My brother had always resented the attention my military service occasionally drew from our father. Despite being the favorite son, Michael craved total approval. Had he somehow poisoned the family against me? The next message confirmed my suspicions. "Michael has shown us everything. The photos, the reports, your commanding officer's statements. We know what you did." None of this made sense. My commanding officers had nothing but praise for my service. There were no damning photos, no reports of misconduct. This was fiction, a fabricated narrative designed to drive a wedge between me and my family. I spent the night alternating between rage and despair, drafting long messages explaining and defending myself, then deleting them unsent. What good would it do? My father had clearly made up his mind, and without being able to reach my mother or sister, I had no allies in the house. As dawn broke, I made my decision. I would not beg for acceptance from people who could so easily believe the worst of me. I would not crawl back to a home that rejected me based on lies. My reply to my father was as brief as his first message to me. Fine, 1 word, 2 syllables. A universe of hurt contained in 4 letters. I canceled my flight, returned the gifts to their shops where possible, and removed the sad little Christmas tree from my coffee table. The excitement that had sustained me for weeks evaporated, leaving a hollow feeling in my chest. That night, alone in my apartment with a bottle of whiskey for company, I looked at old photos from my deployments. My team members, many now scattered across the country, grinned back at me from dusty landscapes. These men had trusted me with their lives. They knew my character. Why could my own family not see what they saw? The pocket watch for my father remained on my dresser, unwrapped. I could not bring myself to return it, nor could I imagine ever giving it to him now. It became a symbol of everything I had lost. Everything that had been taken from me by whatever lies Michael had told. Christmas was 3 days away, and for the first time since I was a child, I would spend it completely alone. The whiskey hangover from my night of solitary drinking did nothing to improve my mood the next morning. My head pounded in rhythm with my heartbeat as I fumbled for aspirin in my bathroom cabinet. The face that stared back at me from the mirror looked older, harder than it had just days before. "This is not who you are," I told my reflection. "Marines do not accept defeat without investigation." I pulled out my phone and called the one person I knew could help me make sense of this situation. Marcus answered on the second ring, his voice alert despite the early hour. "Eduardo, you okay, man? Thought you would be in Minnesota by now." "Plans changed," I replied, my voice rough. "I need your help, your professional help." As a private investigator specializing in digital forensics, Marcus had resources and skills I lacked. Over the next hour, I explained everything. The text messages, the accusations, my suspicions about Michael, and the complete cutoff from my mother and sister. "So you think your brother fabricated evidence that you committed crimes during your deployments?" Marcus summarized. "That is serious, Eduardo. Not just family drama serious, but potentially criminal serious." "I need to know what he told them," I said. "And I need proof that it is false." "I can help with both," Marcus replied. "Give me 48 hours to dig into this. And Eduardo, do not do anything rash in the meantime." Those 48 hours were among the longest of my life. I cleaned my apartment obsessively, went for punishing runs that left my injured leg throbbing, and drafted dozens of emails to my mother and sister that I never sent. The uncertainty was worse than any combat situation I had faced. In battle, at least I knew who the enemy was. Marcus called exactly 2 days later, his voice grave but satisfied. "You were right about your brother," he began without preamble. "He has been systematically undermining you for years, but recently kicked it into high gear. And I think I know why." According to Marcus's investigation, Michael's financial services company had been struggling for the past year. While projecting an image of success to the family, he had made several high-risk investments that failed spectacularly. But rather than admit his failures, he had begun siphoning money from the family trust fund established by my grandparents. "How much?" I asked, my stomach tightening. "Close to $800,000, Marcus replied. "Nearly the entire trust. Money that was supposed to support your parents in retirement and eventually be split between all 3 of you kids." The pieces began falling into place. Michael needed a distraction, something to keep my parents from looking too closely at the family finances. What better distraction than a disgraced son? If they were focused on my supposed crimes, they would not notice Michael's very real ones. "But what specifically did he tell them I did?" I pressed. Marcus hesitated. "He created a convincing narrative about you being involved in smuggling operations during your deployments. Doctored photos showing you with contraband, fake emails from commanding officers expressing concern, even a falsified investigation report. Eduardo, he spent months building this fiction. Can you prove it is fake?" "Already working on it," Marcus assured me. "I have contacts at Marine headquarters who can provide documentation of your actual service record. And I am tracking down some of your former commanding officers for statements." "Thank you," I said, emotion tightening my throat. "What else did you find?" The picture Marcus painted became even darker. Michael had apparently installed monitoring software on my parents' computers and phones, allowing him to intercept my messages to my mother and sister. He had been running interference, preventing any direct communication that might expose his lies. "There is more," Marcus added. "Based on some documents I found, Michael has been pressuring your parents to rewrite their will, cutting you out entirely. The meeting with their lawyer is scheduled for December 27th, 2 days after Christmas. The timing was deliberate, calculated to ensure I would be completely severed from the family before I could discover the financial theft." "What are you going to do?" Marcus asked after laying out all the evidence. The anger that had been simmering inside me crystallized into resolve. "I am going home for Christmas after all, but not how I planned." Over the next 24 hours, I developed a strategy. Marcus compiled a comprehensive file of evidence, proving both my innocence and Michael's guilt. I contacted several of my former team members who agreed to provide written character statements on my behalf. My former commanding officer, now a lieutenant colonel, even recorded a video testimonial about my exemplary service record. Armed with truth, I booked a new flight to Minnesota, scheduled to arrive on Christmas Eve. I would not announce my arrival. I would not give Michael time to prepare more lies or intercept me. I would simply appear at the family gathering and confront the situation head-on. The night before my flight, I took out the antique pocket watch I had bought for my father. I had intended it as a peace offering, a bridge between his military service and mine. Now it would serve a different purpose. It would be a reminder that honor and truth matter, values I had learned partly from him before he allowed himself to be deceived. As I packed my bag again, this time with evidence rather than gifts, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This was a different kind of mission, but one I was equally prepared for. Marines are taught to adapt and overcome. That is exactly what I intended to do. The snow fell in thick, lazy flakes as the taxi dropped me off at the end of my parents' driveway on Christmas Eve. The familiar two-story colonial looked exactly as I remembered it, now decorated with multicolored lights that traced the roofline and windows. A large wreath hung on the front door, and through the front windows, I could see the glow of the Christmas tree in the living room. For a moment, I hesitated. Was I doing the right thing? Would this confrontation destroy whatever remained of my family? Then I remembered Marcus's words. If you do not expose this now, your parents will lose everything. Not just their money, but their dignity too. I adjusted my uniform cap and straightened my dress blues. I had decided to wear my full military formal uniform, complete with the ribbons and medals I had earned through a decade of service. If Michael wanted to paint me as a disgrace to the Marines, he would have to do it to my face, with the physical evidence of my honorable service visible to everyone. The walk to the front door felt longer than any patrol I had ever conducted. My dress shoes crunched in the fresh snow, leaving a trail of footprints behind me. The weight of the evidence folder under my arm was substantial, both physically and metaphorically. I did not ring the doorbell. Using the key I had kept all these years, I quietly unlocked the door and stepped inside. The familiar sense of pine, cinnamon, and my mother's cooking enveloped me immediately, triggering a flood of memories so intense I had to pause to collect myself. Voices drifted from the living room, the familiar cadence of my family's conversation, punctuated by occasional laughter. I moved silently down the hallway, my military training making my footsteps virtually silent despite the formal shoes. I paused at the entrance to the living room, taking in the scene before announcing my presence. My mother sat in her favorite armchair, looking older than I remembered, but still beautiful in a red sweater with a Christmas brooch. Sophia lounged on the floor near the tree, her hair longer than in recent photos. My father occupied his usual position in the leather recliner that no one else was ever allowed to sit in, and there was Michael, standing by the fireplace with a glass of what appeared to be expensive scotch, gesturing as he told some story that had my mother smiling politely. The domestic scene looked so normal, so peaceful, yet it was built on a foundation of lies. My hand tightened on the evidence folder as I stepped into the doorway. "Merry Christmas," I said, my voice cutting through the conversation like a knife. 4 heads turned simultaneously, 4 expressions shifting from holiday cheer to shock in an instant. "Eduardo?" My mother was the first to recover, half rising from her chair, her hand going to her throat. "Eddie!" Sophia scrambled to her feet, her face lighting up. My father remained seated, his expression unreadable, while Michael's face drained of color so rapidly, I thought he might faint. "What are you doing here?" my father finally asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. "I told you not to come." "I got your message," I replied evenly, "but I thought we should discuss it face to face, as a family." "There is nothing to discuss," he said. "You are not welcome here." My mother looked confused. "Richard, what are you saying?" "Of course Eduardo is welcome. He is our son." "Tell her, Dad," I said, never taking my eyes from his. "Tell Mom and Sophia why you texted me not to come home for Christmas. Tell them about the crimes I supposedly committed while serving my country. Richard. My mother turned to my father, bewilderment clear on her face. What is he talking about? Michael set down his glass with a sharp click against the mantelpiece. I should check on the turkey, he said, attempting to slide past me toward the kitchen. Stay right where you are, Michael, I said, my voice carrying the authority I had developed as a squad leader. To my mild surprise, he froze. Everyone sit down, I continued. It is time for the truth to come out. The truth is that you dishonored your uniform, and this family, my father began, but I cut him off. No, sir. The truth is that you have been lied to, systematically and deliberately. I opened the folder and began laying out documents on the coffee table. These are my actual service records, my actual commendations, statements from my commanding officers about my conduct during deployments. As my family leaned forward to look at the documents, I turned to Michael, whose face had now taken on a sickly gray hue. Would you like to tell them, or shall I? Tell us what? My mother asked, looking between Michael and me with growing concern. When Michael remained silent, I continued. Michael has been stealing from the family trust fund for over a year. Nearly $800,000 gone. And to prevent you from discovering it, he fabricated evidence that I was involved in criminal activities during my military service. That is ridiculous, my father scoffed, but with less conviction than before. Michael would never. Check the trust fund, Dad, I suggested quietly. Call the bank right now and ask for the current balance. My father's expression flickered, doubt creeping in for the first time. He pulled out his phone and stepped into the hallway, presumably to make the call in private. The rest of us waited in tense silence, Michael now leaning against the wall as if his legs might give out. When my father returned, his face had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. The account, he said slowly, is nearly empty. Just $20,000 remains. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. But that is impossible. That money was for our retirement, for the children's inheritance. All eyes turned to Michael, who had the look of a cornered animal. I can explain, he began, his voice unnaturally high. The investments were solid. They should have paid off. I was going to replace the money before anyone noticed. So you decided to destroy your brother's reputation? Sophia asked, her voice trembling with anger. To make us all hate him, so we would not notice you were stealing from us? I did not have a choice, Michael shouted, his composure finally cracking. Do you know what it is like living in his shadow? Poor Michael. Always second best to the hero, Marine. Dad talks about Eduardo's service more than my entire career in finance. My father looked stunned. That is not true, he protested weakly. It is true, Michael insisted. Nothing I do is ever good enough. Eduardo joins the Marines against your wishes, and suddenly he is the prodigal son you cannot wait to welcome home. Well, I made sure that would not happen. The raw emotion in his voice silenced the room. I had never imagined my brother felt this way. In my mind, he had always been the favorite, the one who followed the path our father laid out. I never wanted to hurt anyone, Michael continued, his voice breaking. I just needed time to fix the investments. When I heard Eduardo was coming home for Christmas, I panicked. I knew he might ask questions about the trust, about my business. I had to keep him away. So you turned his own family against him, my mother said, her voice hardening in a way I had never heard before. You made us believe terrible things about our son. How could you? Sophia asked, tears streaming down her face. My father stood slowly, his expression a complex mixture of anger, disappointment, and shame. Michael, he said, his voice deadly quiet, get out of my house. Dad, please, Michael began. Get out, my father roared, a vein pulsing in his forehead. I cannot even look at you right now. Michael looked around the room desperately, finding no sympathy in any face. With a strangled sound between a sob and a curse, he grabbed his coat and rushed past us toward the door. Moments later, we heard his car start and the tires squeal as he drove away into the snowy night. The silence he left behind was deafening. My mother sat with her head in her hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Sophia moved to comfort her, throwing a grateful glance in my direction. My father remained standing, looking suddenly old and uncertain. "I believed him," he said finally, looking at me with pain-filled eyes. "I believe the worst about my own son, without even giving you a chance to defend yourself. You have always found it easier to believe the worst about me," I replied, the hurt of years creeping into my voice despite my efforts to remain calm. "That is not true," he protested, but weakly. "Is it not? From the moment I chose the Marines over college, you have been waiting for me to fail, waiting to say, 'I told you so.'" Michael knew that. He knew exactly which buttons to push. My father sank back into his chair, the fight gone out of him. "I was trying to protect you," he said quietly. "The military. I saw things in Korea, did things. I never wanted that for you. That was not your choice to make," I said. "It was mine." He nodded slowly. "I see that now. Too late, perhaps." I crossed the room and knelt beside his chair, coming eye to eye with him for the first time in years. It is not too late if we do not want it to be. For a moment, I thought he might embrace me. Instead, he stood abruptly. "I need some air," he said, and walked out onto the back porch, closing the door firmly behind him. My mother wiped her eyes and came to hug me tightly. "He will come around," she whispered. "He just needs time to process everything. His pride is wounded." "I know," I replied, returning her embrace. That night, I slept in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by the remnants of who I had been before the Marines. Sports trophies, model airplanes, and faded posters created a time capsule of my youth. But I was no longer that boy, and my family was no longer the idealized version I had carried in my heart during deployments. We were all broken in different ways, all guilty of different failures. The question now was whether we could rebuild something new from the fragments of what had been shattered this Christmas Eve. After the explosive Christmas Eve revelation, I decided to return to San Diego immediately. The family needed time to process everything, and my presence seemed to make the situation more tense rather than less. My mother begged me to stay, but I could see the wisdom in giving everyone space, particularly my father, who remained distant and withdrawn. "I will come back," I promised her, as we stood on the porch the morning after Christmas. "When things have settled down, your father loves you," she insisted, clutching my arm. "He just does not know how to say it after everything that has happened." "I know, Mom," I replied, though I was far from certain. The flight back to California gave me time to reflect on the confrontation and its aftermath. While the truth had come out, the damage to my family seemed extensive. Michael had disappeared, not returning for Christmas Day, and not answering calls from anyone. My father had barely spoken during Christmas dinner, mechanically going through the motions of celebration while clearly lost in his own thoughts. Only Sophia seemed genuinely happy to have me home, peppering me with questions about my life in San Diego and my plans for the future. Back in my apartment, I tried to settle into a routine again. I applied for several security consultant positions, scheduled a meeting with a VA counselor about educational benefits, and even joined a local veterans support group. Life was moving forward, even if my family situation remained unresolved. A week after my return, I awoke to an unusual sound. My phone was vibrating continuously on the nightstand, the screen lighting up with notification after notification. Groggily, I reached for it, blinking at the sudden brightness in my dark bedroom. 20 missed calls, 15 from my mother, 3 from Sophia, 1 from my father, and 1 from a number I did not recognize but had a Minnesota area code. The earliest call had come in just after midnight, the most recent just minutes ago. My heart rate spiked immediately. This many calls could only mean an emergency. Had something happened to my father, to Sophia? With trembling fingers, I called my mother back. She answered on the first ring, her voice thick with what sounded like a mixture of anger and tears. "Eduardo, thank God. We have been trying to reach you for hours. What is wrong?" I asked, already getting out of bed and reaching for clothes. "Is everyone okay?" "It is Michael," she said. "He has been arrested. Securities fraud, embezzlement, falsifying documents. The police came to the house looking for financial records." I sat back down on the bed, stunned. "When did this happen?" "Last night," she replied. Your father is beside himself. The police said Michael has been running a Ponzi scheme through his investment company. It is not just our money he took, Eduardo. There are dozens of victims. The magnitude of Michael's crimes was just beginning to sink in. This went far beyond family betrayal. This was the kind of white-collar crime that resulted in serious prison time. The other number that called you, my mother continued, that was Gregory Palmer, our family attorney. He needs to speak with you as soon as possible. The situation is complicated. Complicated how? I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I already knew. Some of the falsified documents Michael created implicate you as well, she explained, her voice dropping. They will be proven false, of course, but Gregory wants to get ahead of the situation. After promising my mother I would call the lawyer immediately, I ended the call and sat in the pre-dawn darkness of my apartment, trying to process this new development. My brother's desperate attempt to cover his crimes had now escalated from family drama to legal jeopardy. Gregory Palmer had been our family's attorney for as long as I could remember. A tall, thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a perpetually serious expression, he had handled everything from my grandparents' will to my parents' estate planning. When I called him back, his normally measured voice held an unusual edge of urgency. Eduardo, thank you for returning my call. I apologize for the early hour, but this matter requires immediate attention. He explained that while the main focus of the investigation was clearly Michael and his financial crimes, some of the falsified documents suggested that I had received money from him, allegedly proceeds from my supposed criminal activities during military service. These allegations are completely false, I assured him. I have no doubt, Palmer replied, but we need to establish your innocence conclusively and quickly. The FBI is involved now, and they are thoroughly investigating everyone connected to Michael's business dealings. By the end of the call, it was clear I needed to return to Minnesota immediately. Palmer had arranged a family meeting at his office the following afternoon, and my presence was essential to sort through the tangled legal issues now facing the family. 6 hours later, I was on another plane heading east, a sense of déjà vu washing over me. Once again, I was flying home to confront a family crisis. This time, however, the stakes were even higher. When I landed in Minneapolis, I rented a car rather than asking anyone to pick me up. The drive to Rochester gave me time to prepare mentally for whatever awaited me. The winter landscape flashed by outside my window, fields of white broken occasionally by farmhouses and stands of bare trees. Palmer's law office occupied the top floor of one of Rochester's few high-rise buildings, offering a view of the city and the surrounding countryside. When I arrived, my parents and Sophia were already seated in the conference room, along with Palmer and a younger attorney I did not recognize. My father looked up as I entered, and the expression on his face stopped me in my tracks. Gone was the anger and pride that had characterized our interactions for years. Instead, I saw something I had never expected: vulnerability. Eduardo, he said, rising from his chair. Thank you for coming. The simple acknowledgement, delivered without criticism or qualification, felt momentous. Palmer cleared his throat. Now that we are all here, let us get straight to business. The situation is serious, but not insurmountable. Over the next hour, he laid out the facts as they were known. Michael had been running a sophisticated investment scam for nearly 2 years, promising high returns that were initially paid using money from new investors. When that strategy began to falter, he turned to the family trust fund, draining it systematically while creating false statements to hide the theft. The total amount missing is approximately $970,000, Palmer stated, the number hanging in the air like a physical presence. This includes the trust fund and investments from approximately 35 individual clients. How could he do this? My mother whispered, more to herself than anyone else. When his scheme began to collapse, Palmer continued, Michael created an elaborate cover story involving Eduardo. He fabricated evidence suggesting that Eduardo had been involved in smuggling operations during his military deployments, and that the proceeds had been laundered through Michael's investment company. But that is completely false, Sophia protested. Of course it is, Palmer agreed, and we will prove that. However, the immediate concern is the family's financial situation. The trust fund is essentially gone. Your retirement savings, Richard and Margaret, have been severely compromised. My father's face was ashen. We will lose the house, he said quietly. Not necessarily, Palmer replied. There are options we can pursue. But yes, your financial security has been significantly impacted. As the meeting continued, the full scope of Michael's betrayal became clear. He had not only stolen from the family financially, but had attempted to destroy my reputation and freedom to cover his crimes. The FBI was now investigating all aspects of his business and personal finances, which meant our family would be under scrutiny for months to come. What happens now? I asked when Palmer finally paused. Michael will likely face significant jail time, the younger attorney spoke up. The evidence against him is overwhelming. As for the family, we need to focus on damage control, establishing Eduardo's innocence, protecting what assets remain, and determining a path forward. As the meeting wound down, Palmer asked to speak with me privately. When the others had filed out, he closed the conference room door and turned to me with a serious expression. There is one more thing you should know, he said. Something I did not want to discuss in front of your parents yet. My stomach tightened. What is it? Michael attempted to implicate you, not just to distract the family, but because he needed a scapegoat for the authorities. The fabricated evidence suggesting you were involved in illegal activities during your service was quite elaborate. If he had succeeded in establishing that narrative, you might have faced criminal charges while he portrayed himself as an unwitting accomplice. The calculated nature of the betrayal took my breath away. My own brother was willing to send me to prison to save himself? Palmer nodded grimly. It appears so. The good news is that his plan failed. The FBI has already spoken with your former commanding officers and reviewed your actual service records. They are satisfied that you had no involvement in any criminal activity. When I rejoined my family in the lobby, a strange calm had settled over me. The anger I expected to feel toward Michael had been replaced by something like pity. What kind of desperation would drive someone to betray their family so completely? My father stood awkwardly near the elevator, his usual commanding presence diminished by the events of the past week. When he saw me approach, he straightened slightly. I owe you an apology, he said, the words clearly difficult for him. I should have trusted you. I should have questioned Michael's claims. I failed you as a father. Dad, I began, but he held up a hand. Please, let me finish. I have been unfair to you for years, holding you to an impossible standard while praising Michael for following the path I chose for him. I was wrong, and it took nearly losing everything to see it. The elevator arrived with a soft chime, but neither of us moved to enter it. I am proud of you, son, he continued, his voice roughening with emotion. Not despite your choice to join the Marines, but because of the man that choice helped you become. A man of integrity, courage, and loyalty. A better man than I have been. The words I had waited a decade to hear washed over me, and for a moment I could not speak. Then I did something I had not done since I was a child. I hugged my father. After a moment of surprise, his arms came around me, tentative at first, then tightening with unexpected strength. We stood there in the lobby of Palmer's office building, a father and son beginning to rebuild what had been broken for far too long. 6 months passed, bringing summer warmth to Minnesota and slow healing to our family. The immediate aftermath of Michael's arrest had been brutal. News coverage in the local press, neighbors whispering behind their hands, the shame of having our family's private disaster made public. But gradually, like seedlings pushing through soil after a harsh winter, new growth began to emerge from the devastation. My parents did not lose their house, though it was a close call. The FBI investigation recovered some of the stolen funds, and my father, showing a resilience I had not known he possessed, came out of retirement to work as a consultant for his former company. My mother picked up extra shifts at the hospital, her practical nature asserting itself in crisis. As for me, I made the decision to move back to Minnesota, at least temporarily. I found an apartment 20 minutes from my parents' home and accepted a position with a security firm in Rochester. It was not the life I had envisioned when I left the Marines, but it felt right to be close to my family during this time of rebuilding. Michael pled guilty to multiple counts of securities, fraud, and embezzlement. The plea deal reduced his potential sentence from 30 years to 12, with possibility of parole after 8. Our parents visited him regularly at the medium security facility where he was incarcerated. I had not yet found it in myself to go, though we had exchanged a few letters, tentative attempts to understand what had happened and why. In one letter, he had written, "I do not expect forgiveness, but I want you to know that my actions came from my own weakness, not from any failure on your part. I was jealous of the man you became, while I was just pretending to be someone worthy of respect." The most profound change, however, was in my relationship with my father. The walls that had stood between us for so long began to crumble, not all at once, but in small moments of connection. We found common ground in unexpected places, a shared appreciation for military history, similar tastes in books, the same dry sense of humor that had gone unrecognized for years. One evening in late July, we sat on the back porch of my parents' house, watching fireflies rise from the lawn as darkness fell. My mother and Sophia were inside, preparing dessert after a family dinner that had become a weekly tradition. "I found something when we were organizing the attic last week," my father said, reaching into his pocket. "I thought you should have it." He handed me a small box. Inside was a tarnished medal, one I recognized immediately, his service medal from Korea. "Grandma Eleanor gave me her medal before I left for basic training," I said quietly. "I know," he replied. "She told me. Said you needed it more than she did. I was angry at the time. Felt she was encouraging you down a path I did not want for you. Now I understand what she saw in you that I was too blind to see." I turned the medal over in my palm, feeling the weight of history and family connection. "Why did you never talk about Korea?" I asked. A question I had wondered for years but never dared to voice. My father was silent for so long I thought he might not answer. Then he sighed, the sound carrying the weight of decades. "I saw things there that haunted me," he said finally. "Did things that haunted me even more. When I came home, I thought the best way to protect my future children was to keep them far away from that world. I built a wall around those experiences, and eventually, the wall extended to everything, including you. Is that why you were so angry when I joined the Marines?" He nodded. "I thought I had failed to protect you. I did not understand that you were not choosing what I had experienced. You were choosing your own path, fighting your own battles. It took me far too long to see the difference." We sat in companionable silence as darkness settled fully around us. In the distance, heat lightning flickered across the summer sky. "Do you remember the Christmas traditions we had when you were young?" my father asked suddenly. "Of course," I replied. "The star on the tree, the specific order we had to open presents, Mom's apple pie for breakfast on Christmas morning. This Christmas will be different," he said. "Michael will not be there. The trust fund that used to pay for the elaborate celebrations is gone. But I think it might be the most important Christmas this family has ever had." "Why is that?" I asked. "Because now we understand what matters," he said simply. "Not the presents or the perfect dinner or the image we present to the neighbors. What matters is that we are together, that we speak the truth to each other, that we do not let pride or fear keep us apart." That night, as I drove back to my apartment, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. 10 years of military service had taught me about brotherhood, sacrifice, and courage under fire. But the past 6 months had taught me equally valuable lessons about forgiveness, redemption, and the complicated, imperfect nature of family love. The antique pocket watch I had bought for my father now sat on his desk, a daily reminder of the time we had almost lost forever and the time we were now committed to spending together. He wound it each morning, he told me, as a ritual of remembrance and gratitude. Michael's betrayal had nearly destroyed our family, but in the breaking and rebuilding, we had found a stronger foundation. The father who had once been unable to express pride in my military service now displayed my commendations in the living room alongside Michael's college diplomas, symbolic of his acceptance of both his sons, flaws and all. My mother had told me once, During the darkest days after Michael's arrest, sometimes the family you rebuild is stronger than the one you thought was perfect. I had not understood what she meant then, but I did now. The facade of the perfect family had been shattered, revealing the true, messy, complicated relationships beneath. And in that truth, painful as it was, we had found authenticity. I had gone from being unwelcome in my childhood home to having my own key again, from stilted conversations with my father to genuine connection. The path had been painful, but the destination was worth every difficult step. As I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment building, my phone chimed with a text message from my father, thinking about fishing next weekend at the lake, like we used to when you were young. Interested? I smiled as I typed my reply. Absolutely. I will bring the tackle. Some wounds never fully heal. The trust fund was gone. Michael would spend years in prison, and our family would always bear the scars of what had happened. But we had found our way back to each other, and that was a treasure worth more than any inheritance. What is your relationship with your family like? Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to something positive? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that even the deepest family wounds can heal with time, truth, and courage. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes the most painful homecomings can lead to the most meaningful reunions.